Today I'll be talking about patterns in algebra, mainly focusing on repeated patterns. The key ideas are patterns in algebra is about the ability to use and interpret numbers in many different ways. Students need to grasp the understanding of small and large numbers and how to carry out calculations. When looking at linear patterns, they are repeated patterns that are expressed in a linear form, such as AB, 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 and AB, how it's going across. This helps students with concepts such as equal groups, skip counting, double counting, and repeated subtraction. Another one to look at is growing patterns. This is about how the pattern continues to get bigger as it goes, such as 5, 7, 9, 11. That's a number form, but you can also look at, as we've most likely seen already, the toothpick form. But it is good for looking at the language and numbers first, because the toothpicks and symbols can become confusing, but it's the extended form that can be used later on, or for those students who understand it already. Something else to look at is balancing. This shows students that on equal sign means that the two sides are equal to each other. So not just that 2 plus 5 equals 7, but also 2 plus 5 is the same as 3 plus 4. This is a good concept for the students to understand. Misconceptions. When looking at grade 1 or sometimes above, difficulties with symbols being in place of numbers can occur. Students may find this too hard to understand and prefer to use numbers. Some may believe patterns only have one form, which, as we know, there's many different forms, and in those forms there's different ones, such as the repeated patterns. You can use things like colours, numbers, letters, or even other patterns can use them as well. Some believe patterns are only repeating of two things, but this isn't true. You can use many different objects, just the smaller it is, the easier the pattern. So you could use 3 or 4 if you like, but then using more may become a bit too hard. They may also believe that patterns are only whole numbers, but you can also use fractions or decimals if you like, but this may become a bit hard for them, so it's good to start with the whole numbers. The learning objectives. So the learning objectives are students need to understand how repeated patterns work and how to recognise the way the pattern will continue. To get students to reach the objective, I will get them to play some games and do some worksheets. So I will use 3 different activities for this. Activities. Okay, so it's first a good idea to start on the floor and start together as a class. Cutnick and Blatchford say that it is a good idea to use group work, as students seem to understand it a lot better. So they can start on the floor, and the teacher should show different examples on the board, such as number examples, colour, shape, and letters. I believe it's good to show 2 different number forms, as you can show one that is increasing and one that is decreasing. Okay, so first you should get the students to choose some objects after they seem to understand the examples on the board. So you should choose about 3 different students, and they may get a book, a pencil, and a glue stick. So first you should discuss the objects that have been chosen and the order that the students want to put it in. So it won't really matter what order. So if they put it in this order, we know that the book will come next, and then the pencil, and then the glue stick again. So you should discuss the next order with the students all together and see if they understand. And something else to use is a worksheet. A simple worksheet should be used. It can be modified to make it easier or modified to make it harder, depending on how the students do. So one, you could use shapes and colours together, such as the square is blue, the circle is pink, and the triangle is orange. So then the students will then go through the pattern and they will continue to colour. So they will do blue, pink, orange, blue, pink, orange. If this is too hard, you could always just get all squares and you could colour them in. So you would get the first 3 or the first 4 and colour them in different colours, and then you would get the students to continue this. Or you can just use shapes as they are. So I've got a square, circle, triangle, and a square. So then you should then go on with the students and get them to finish it off. For the next lesson, I would use the students to stand up for me. So I would do this activity so that it would check if they understood the previous lesson and see what they know and what they found too hard. So you would get students to stand up, so you might get a boy and you get them to stand up at the front of the class, and then you'll get a girl, and then you'll get a boy again, a girl, and then you'll ask the students who comes next and see if they know that it will be, like, who it will be. Otherwise you could do something like a boy and then 2 girls, a boy and 2 girls. It doesn't really matter, it's up to you, and you can see how hard you can make the pattern or how easy it needs to be made. The students also need to be able to do this as well, so it becomes a bit more engaging and they understand it a bit better if they do it themselves. So then you'll choose some students and they will each have a go at making a pattern and talk to the class about what's going to come next or who's going to come next. So prior knowledge for this. So for a grade 1, the prior knowledge needs to be, they need to identify numbers. So they should be able to identify at least 1 to 10, but you could go further if you like. They also need to identify shapes and objects such as the square, the circle. Objects need to be understood as well. So when we're looking at the book, the glue and the pencil. So students need to be able to identify different objects so that they can continue the pattern with the objects.
Today I will be talking about growing patterns, which are also known as building patterns. Key ideas. Growing patterns are sequences of numbers, shapes or objects that are related to each other. For example, here we have 11, 12, 14, 17 and 21. Here we can see that 11 plus 1 equals 12, 12 plus 2 equals 14, 14 plus 3 equals 17, and 17 plus 4 equals 21. Here the pattern rule is to start at 11 and add 1. Each time the amount you add increases by 1. Another growing pattern could include shapes instead of numbers. So here we have square, triangle, square, square, triangle, square, 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 triangle. The only thing that matters is that the pattern grows as it continues. Common misconceptions. Some common misconceptions that students face are: some students may be more inclined to use numbers in patterns rather than using symbols, or vice versa. Some may think that patterns can only be linear patterns. For example, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, or red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. And they may find it difficult to grasp the concept of growing patterns. For example, 1, 2, 4, 7 and 11. They may also believe that growing patterns can only involve whole numbers. Students may find identifying growing patterns more difficult as they would be used to looking at linear patterns. Learning objectives. For students to be able to successfully identify growing patterns, for students to understand that many different variations of growing patterns, for students to be able to start to identify and describe rules used to create the growing patterns. AusVALs. Level 2. Describe patterns with numbers and identify missing elements. Level 3. Describe, continue and create number patterns resulting from performing addition or subtraction. Level 4. Explore and describe number patterns resulting from performing multiplication. Assumed prior knowledge and skills. Students are able to identify linear patterns, and students need to be able to be confident with the 4 operations. The activity. I would start with a group discussion of what growing patterns are. I would get my students to sit on the floor and give them examples of growing patterns. For example, I would show them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. Something as basic as this, as we can show that each time 1 is added. I would also show them 1, 2, 4, 7 and 11. as each time 1 is added, then 2, then 3, etc. I would get all the students to sit in a circle and I would sit in the circle with them. I would use objects such as counters to show growing patterns instead of showing them with numbers. I would explain to the students how one of the growing patterns is formed. For example, I would say that this one increases by 1, then 2, then 3, etc. So that's similar to the 1, 2, 4, 7 and 11. I would also describe the rule for it. I would then show them another growing pattern and ask the class if anyone can do the same for this one. This little activity will lead to a paired activity later. The activity that I have chosen is a partner activity where each student will be given 2 patterns. One made with matchsticks, one with counters. Each person in pairs will need to choose one. The students will be asked in pairs to make the next 3 terms of the patterns. They are then asked to write down a number sequence or rule that describes the pattern. So as we can see, for the counters, 3 will be added each time. And for the matchsticks, each time 1 triangle would be added. They are then asked how many matchsticks or counters will be in the 10th term. So for the counters, we can see that this will be the 10th term. Students may use different strategies to get to the answer. Some may use the rule to find the answer. Some may use the counters and matchsticks to figure this out. The activity includes a reflection and discussion part where students in their pairs can swap and compare their patterns with their partners and discuss their rules for each pattern. This activity can be increased in difficulty by increasing the patterns. So each time you might be able to have, instead of 3 each time, it might be add 3, then add 6 or 9, and the same for the matchsticks. This activity allows for students to learn about growing patterns by using visual and hands-on learning styles. By working in pairs, students will be able to learn from their peers as well as their teachers.